Hello friends, welcome back to yet another Infinite Magicraid video. In this one I'm going to be talking about some of the things I've done in the game that I've later regretted. So let's analyse all the stupid shit that I've done, and hopefully you guys will be able to learn from it and it'll help you guys throughout your IMR journey. So my first regret is investing a significant amount of money into my first account. Now, if you guys have seen my video on how to re-roll and become overpowered by starting on a fresh server, using your game knowledge to get a head start, etc, etc, you'll understand what I mean by this. If you haven't seen that, do go check it out. I think it's my most popular video so far, which is pretty cool. But to briefly summarise, on my first account I wasn't very good at the game, I messed up a bunch of stuff, I didn't use my resources correctly, and in the end I decided it was best to start again. And the second time around, on a new server, I did incredibly well, I was very efficient, I followed a game plan, but of course nagging at me at the back of my head is, but if you give up that first account, then that money you spent is going to be wasted. And because of that, I tried to play 2 accounts at the same time. All that meant was I was spending on 2 accounts, which was a terrible idea, never do this, and I just didn't have the time in the day to dedicate myself properly to 2 accounts, so I ended up dropping the first account, and I don't regret it at all. The idea that you've spent too much money and you're missing out is actually a psychological thing called the sunken cost fallacy. It's not good, just do it, honestly. The most important thing about that first account is that you learned how to play the game, you got that game knowledge. If you're in the same position, bite the bullet, start again, get a great start, you'll progress faster and you'll enjoy the game a bunch more. So, another regret of mine is leveling up the wrong auras, specifically on mythic heroes. And when I say leveling up, I don't mean getting them to 5 stars. I mean when you level them up to 30 for the stat boosts. And the reason I say this is because when you disassemble an aura, it eats a lot of the EXP you invested into it. So if you got an aura to level 30 and then you disassemble it, the next aura might only go to level 24, and all of that EXP is just wasted. But there is kind of a workaround for this. If you regress a hero, you get everything back. So if you can, regress, don't disassemble, you'll get all that EXP back, you won't have to spend the gems. However, this doesn't work with mythic heroes, and it doesn't work with breakthrough heroes, and that was the mistake I made. I leveled a level 30 aura on near read, and then it was a bad aura, it was the wrong one. I got Hitmaster, I should have got Mastery Surge. I ended up disassembling it and losing a bunch of EXP. So make sure you're being careful when you're crafting your auras and leveling them up. So my next regret is the misuse of Legend Eyes. Although this can be true for any valuable one-time use resource. So I never really used Legend Eyes on bad heroes per se, apart from the one time I got tricked into putting an eye into Alicia by Kanko. He really did love Alicia, he thought she was great, but she wasn't. She wasn't great. I have an E1 Alicia and she's so bad. But what I did do is push heroes to E5 when I should have either invested those eyes into other heroes to get them to E3, or I should have saved them until I got a better hero to do so. At the end of the day, the 50 speed you get from E4, E5 is nice, but E3 heroes are nicer. Like, those E1, E2, E3 upgrades are so powerful for so many heroes. Some heroes, or even, dare I say most heroes released recently, aren't even particularly useful until you get some eyes into them. So don't E5 your heroes unless you're a crazy big spender, or unless that hero is insane with the extra speed. Just hold on to them, and make sure you're using the eyes on the correct heroes in general. This is one of the things you should be asking other players about, especially if you're new. If you're unsure, join us in our Bushido Discord, or use the main Discord, and ask who you should be using your Legend Eyes on. They are simply too valuable to be wasted, especially with the incredible amount of strong non-LTE heroes that are being released recently, and all of the new PVE content that requires a big roster of heroes with exclusives. And leading on from that quite nicely, don't neglect important parts of the game, namely in my case, PVE. Now on a more simple level, this is not one of my regrets as this is never something I did, but make sure you're using all your resources, all your faction abyss tokens, all your tower of mark keys, you're pushing endless cloister, you're getting all the rewards possible. You should never be capped out on keys or tokens. You want to be even gaining stamina. Make sure you're storing your stamina so you're getting that passive stamina gain as well. Those upgrades are important, you need those. It's all part of the progression, maximize the use of all of these things. But looking at this from a different angle and what I did, as you again may know if you listen to my other video, I only focused on PvP. And this worked out great to start. It worked out great for a long time. I managed to progress despite not spending much through doing that. I got my classic arena tree maxed really early. It was great. But when Wuthering Coast released and PvE became really important, when you needed those mythic scales, I began to fall behind. And now on top of that, there are a bunch of new important PvE dungeons and I'm struggling to catch up because I never initially invested in my PvE. I was using those legendized to E5 PvP heroes when I should have been getting core PvE heroes to E3. And now I'm essentially playing catch up, trying to get my PvE solidified, which would never have happened if I didn't focus so hard only on PvP. So make sure you're not neglecting important content like that. And as my last regret, make sure you're crafting and upgrading the correct equipment. When I first started, I was upgrading loads of Fearless gear. Fearless gear sucks. Fearless gear is so bad. No one uses Fearless gear. Leech is terrible. Don't build it. Don't waste it. Build Devour like everyone else. It's the best. Trust me on that one. You only get a limited amount of ingots and some of the sets are just not good in comparison to others. You want to make sure you're investing these ingots correctly, that you're forging the right gear, that you're not making loads of Fearless like me. I am actually intending to make a video on the best item sets to forge in due time, for those that don't know where to start here. I know it's quite difficult sometimes to work out what sets are needed by which heroes and which sets are actually good, so hopefully that'll be helpful for you guys. And just while we're on the subject of gear, make sure you're using your stamina to farm the correct dungeons and get the right gear as well. For most people, that's usually farming speed gear from rum. If you're unsure, you really can't go wrong with farming rum. And that's it from me. Just as a final note, it is my birthday on Friday and I'm turning the terrifying age of 30. So I'm going to try and get some content scheduled to upload over the weekend, but I'm promising nothing because I'm intending to spend the weekend and possibly the day before being incredibly drunk, like really shit-faced, and I won't be active on the internet so much. So that's going to be fun. But thank you all once again for listening, guys. I hope you have a lovely week. Good night and God bless.